We explored the story that says that the Jewish people were living in the Holy Land. Then the temple was destroyed, the first temple, after 900 years of the Jewish people living in the Holy Land, the temple was destroyed and they moved northeast to Babylonia. And Babylonia, Iraq, Iran eventually was taken over by the Persians, and the Jewish people were living there. And there was the Persian kingdom was relatively nice to them. There was even a king who was thinking of allowing them to go rebuild the temple, but then he was convinced out of it by some anti-Semites. So the Jewish people did not go build the temple. They were still stuck in Persia. At that stage, a character named Achashverosh shows up on the scene. Achashverosh did not come from good stock. He was a horse boy originally for the previous king, and managed through maneuvering and clever politics to push himself to the top. But as you know, with all politicians who don't come from good stock, very often they feel very insecure in themselves. Hashtag Donald Trump could be the president of the United States. I'm still feeling totally insecure. And others. Versus when you come from that kind of family, you feel like you deserve it. But in general, it's not only in politics. It's often you find people who do very well, and they don't come from that background. They have the chip on their shoulder. And Achashverosh has the chip on his shoulder. And his wife, on the other hand, is the princess of the previous king, who was actually killed by Achashverosh and his cronies, and he pretty much took the daughter for himself. So Vashti, Achashverosh's king, from the beginning is not exactly impressed with her husband. Talking about another situation, it's that woman who comes from high society who marries a nachschlepper, and the nachschlepper can't get over his own insecurities, and the high society lady can't forgive her husband for being a nachschlepper. So there's not a lot of love lost between the two of them. And the marriage is kacha kacha, as they say, very average. For her, it's worth staying in the marriage because she gets to be the queen. For him, he gets to stay in the marriage because he gets status by being married to the princess of the previous kings, who comes from a big lineage. He gets status out of it. So it's a marriage of convenience that works for both of them. But as we see at the beginning of the Purim story, the moment it's not convenient for Achashverosh to have her, he chops her head off. Because again, as we say, marriage of convenience. And that's how, by the way, the story of Esther takes place. How does Esther show up on the scene? She shows up on the scene because Achashverosh kills his wife and now needs a new trophy wife. So he chooses Esther. But before all this happens, Achashverosh becomes a king. He becomes super powerful. And as I said, he's very insecure. So to celebrate his kingdom, he has to make the biggest party ever to celebrate, the biggest parade. Nobody has ever been more people at this inauguration than ever before in history. And he's going to create the party of all parties. How big is the party he creates? The Torah tells us, the Megillah tells us, he creates a party for 6 months straight. Nice, huh? 6 months non-stop. Vayihi, this is the way the Megillah starts. Vayihi, b'mei Achashverosh, hu Achashverosh. And it was in the days of Achashverosh. Hamolech be'odavat Kush, who was a king from India till Ethiopia. Sheva Esrumei Medina, he was a king over 127 provinces. Nice, huh? And what did he do? He made a party, Shmonim Uma'at Yom, 180 days, 6 months party. Talk about somebody that's insecure. I became king. I'm not just going to have one day of success. It was, I'm going to make a party. This was after 3 years of his kingdom. Things were secure. He felt confident. He felt good with himself. And he's going to throw a party to kill all parties. Now, fantastic. 180 days party for all the dignitaries. Only the Heicha Fensters were invited. After 180 days of nonstop partying and weight gaining, he thinks to himself and says, you know what? That wasn't enough of a party. I need to have one more party. What party is he going to have? He's going to have a 7-day party, but this one is going to be for everybody that lives in the capital city of Washington or Shushan. All the Shushanites are invited to a party, which is going to start on Sunday and go till Saturday night. Perfect. In the city of Shushan, the capital of the Persian Empire, lives a lot of Jews. A lot of Jews are living in this city. And they're invited. Now, here's where the Megillah story takes place. Here's where the Megillah story is set up. The first major episode of the Megillah Purim story is the Jews are invited to a party. And the question is, why are they invited to the party? So Achashverosh invited them just because they're citizens. Why not? But there was another agenda as well, because Achashverosh had a minister who wasn't the prime minister yet, but he was a minister, whose name was Haman. And Haman had a different agenda. He wanted the Jews to come to the party and let their guard down, not exactly behave Jewishly, even though officially there was kosher food over there. But you know, you're going to a party, a wedding that has kosher food, but also not kosher food, and the entertainment is not exactly kosher, and the vibe is not kosher, and the amounts of whiskey is a bit over the top. He knew what's going to happen is the Jews are going to let their guard down, and God is going to be upset, and therefore God's going to decide to not return the Jews to Israel and build the second temple, because everybody knew about this promise that 70 years are going to come, and the 70th year, the Jewish people are going to go down back to Israel. But the Jews were good for the economy. They were good slaves. They were good citizens, and nobody wanted them to leave. On the contrary, it's good to own the Jew. Like the Jew, you want to control them, but you also want to get the benefits of them. And Haman, in his own mind, also wants to kill them one day. So he doesn't want them leaving to Israel. He wants them staying in Persia. So he's the one that advises Achashverosh to make this party for the Jewish people included, so that the Jews can come and drink and celebrate. But there was one character who saw right through this bluff. His name was Mordechai. Mordechai at this time is the leader of the Jewish people, one of the great leaders. He's not from the tribe of Judah, which all the kings came from during the Jewish stay in Israel. He's from the tribe of Benjamin. So he doesn't necessarily come from the tribe of kings. However, he does come from one king, King Saul. The first Jewish king to ever be king was Shaul HaMelech, King Saul, the father-in-law of King David, and he was from the tribe of Benjamin. So Mordechai was a descendant of King Shaul. So he has some stock. He has some yichus. And he's on the Sanhedrin. He's on the high court of the Jewish people. He comes from the temple time. He comes from a good lineage. And he remembers the temple of old. So he was obviously no youngster at this stage. And he does not like this idea of the Jews getting invited to the party. It's not talking to him. And he comes and says, no party. What year is this, by the way? This is all taking place in the year, just to give you guys context, the year 366 BCE, before Common Era. So this is practically 22, we're now in the year 2020 plus 366. It's almost 400 years ago. It's 3,386 years ago. 2,386 years ago, the story of Purim. So he decides to make a party, invites the Jewish people. The Jews go. Mordechai does not want them to go. They don't listen. They're so impressed. What do you mean? We've made it in life. We've been invited to the Achashverosh's party. We must be at the biggest status ever. Well, not too long, a few years later, they're almost killed, a genocide because of their Judaism. But who cares? But at least for the moment, they thought they made it. In general, that's a Jewish problem. Jews, they get overly flattered when somebody invites them in and says, come. You're part of us. You're part of us. Come, you're one of us. The Jew falls over, trips over all fours, gets scraped on the knee. Of course, I'm coming, I'm running over here. And 2 years later, somebody wants to kill you. It's the same story over and over in Germany, in Russia, and communist Russia. The Jews built communism. 80% of the original communist leadership was Jews. And then Stalin comes a few years later and kills every single Jew. Then he even chases down Trotsky in Mexico to kill him. And then there was all the Jews who decided to help the Soviets and destroy Judaism. They were called the Evsektia. We're going to destroy Judaism. Guess what happened to them? After they killed all the religious brothers, they themselves were killed in the 30s by the purges because Stalin kills Jews. But that's the story of Jews over and over and over. We get so flattered when somebody says, be one of us. And then when they stab us in the back, we're like, really? Why? I've been so loyal. I've been your best friend. Yeah, story of the Purim. Just a reminder. If they invite you to a party, don't get too flattered. It doesn't always end well. Be proud of who you are. Don't look. Not sure how that happened. I just came off. If they invite you to the party, don't get too flattered. Don't think that you've made it in life. Just celebrate the fact that you're Jewish. Fine, Mazel Tov. That's the story. They get invited to the party. They go to the party. Sunday they go to the party, and Monday they go to the party, and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday night's coming. Shabbos is coming. Well, it was a religious Jewish community, so they left. They didn't stay at the party for Shabbos. And that's when all the action takes place. What action? By now, Achashverosh and his cronies had been drunk for 187 days straight. So they were tight shikker, they were overweight, oiske blunget, oiske chmur. Can you imagine? Pretty much sitting, they were in lockdown for 187 days. The only difference is their lockdown, they didn't exercise, and they just ate all day, and they had no TV, and they just drank. Pretty much an alcoholic on lockdown. That's what their life was. So, on the seventh day, the final day of the party, a big argument starts. What's the argument? Which women are the prettiest women in the world? That's the argument. Very important stuff, guys. That's what, distinguished gentlemen argue about when they're drunk. So each of the nationalities starts saying, the woman from my kingdom, the woman from Media, Madai, the woman from Persia, the woman from Ethiopia, my women are the prettiest women. Eventually, Achashverosh is feeling very insecure in himself. What do you mean? My wife is the prettiest woman in the world. So they're like, prove it. He says, I'll prove it. So the idiot sends a message to his wife, who was having her own party in the women's section, because as much as they spoke about pretty women, they were total chauvinists, and the women will not be partying with them. The women have their own party. And he sends a message, go tell Vashti to show up in this party, forgive the French, in her birthday suit. Naked. Now, just to think, Vashti was totally up for that in her mind. She wasn't exactly a moral woman by any stretch, and she took her looks very seriously. Very proud of it. But here's where the story starts getting a bit metaphysical and wacko. What's the metaphysical? See, Vashti was a very mean woman. Her husband was an idiot. She was clever and mean. And she had Jewish girls as her servants. And she would whip them and make them work hard, even on Shabbos, including that very day. She made the Jewish girls who were begging not to work on Shabbos, she forced them to work. She was just a mean, miserable, self-righteous kind of individual. So the message comes, Vashti, go show up to your husband. He wants to show off and prove that you're the best looking woman on the planet. Okay, Miss Universe, here we come. So at that moment, she takes a look at the mirror. She's about to get herself ready for this presentation. And the metaphysical thing happens. She suddenly starts getting pimples all over her face. And according to many commentaries, she even grew a tail. Take it or leave it, she grew a tail. Suddenly, showing up naked was not exactly the coolest thing she could think of. So she has to find a way how to keep her honor in place. So she turns to the guard. Obviously, the guard doesn't see her. She's hiding behind the wall. And she says, go tell your stupid master that in the house of my father, King Belshazzar, who was a real king, he could drink and drink and drink and not turn red in the face and never fall down. But you loser, horse boy, stable boy, you drink a half a cup and you act completely insane. I refuse to obey your command. I will not come. I told you it was always a marriage of convenience. So the second it doesn't work for her, she tells her idiot husband exactly what she thinks of him. Mazel tov. Can you imagine what takes place after that? He shows up, the guard shows up and says, Your Honor, yes, where's the queen? Your Honor, I have a message to you from the queen. Now remember, the king is sitting there surrounded by all his distinguished academics, all distinguished politicians, and he's about to show his wife off, and this is what they all hear together. The message from the king is as follows, the queen is as follows, King Ahasuerus. Go tell my stupid husband that in the house of my father, King Belshazzar, he wasn't even good enough to be a stable boy. And my father could drink and drink like 1,000 men and wouldn't get drunk. But you drink a little whiskey and you act completely crazy. I refuse to obey your command. I'm not coming. Shtum. Talk about an awkward silence. At that moment, Ahasuerus became more sober than the rabbi. You know, like total sober, total. Are you kidding me? The queen disrespected me like this? What do I do? A big scandal. Big scandal, guys. This is like the big scandal of the Purim story. Like, can you believe it? The woman who spoke against her husband like that. You know, if Ahasuerus was Jewish, he would be getting this Megillah every single day. But, you know, he wasn't Jewish and wasn't married to a Jewish woman. So he never heard this kind of speech before. Most Jewish husbands would be, okay, Beseder, I've heard this before. No, it's okay, big deal. You know, as they say the story about the Jewish husband, about the fellow who's hiding in the closet. No, the story goes like this. The wife wants to show off to her husband, to her friends, how she bosses her husband around. So she tells her husband, go hide in the closet. So the husband listens. Anyways, after half an hour of him almost choking to death in the closet, she says, you know what, I'll have a little rachmanis on him. Jaime, come out of the closet. No! No. Jaime, come out of the closet. No! She's not impressed. Jaime, I command you to come out of the closet. And with a squeaky, choking voice, he says, no, I'm going to show you who's boss. I'm going to show you who's in charge. First, the guy's locked up in the closet. He's showing her who's in charge. That's a Jewish husband. But Achashverosh wasn't Jewish, wasn't married to a Jewish wife. You never heard it before. And we've said this before, and that, when we say these kind of jokes, it's good to mention the good old Mike, because chances are if I had one joke, he had 50. About the husband who shows up, the guy that shows up to heaven and he sees two lines. One line has 500 people and one line has one. So he shows up and he says, what's this line's all about? And they tell him the line of 500 is for all the people whose wives control them. And the line of the one is for all the guys who control their wives. Psh, impressive. So he walks over to the guy who's standing on the line himself and he says, well done, boy. Well done. Go show them. The guy says, hey, dude, I don't know what I'm standing here for. My wife just told me to stand here. That's a Jewish husband. Like, what do you want from me? I'm sorry, my wife told me to stand here. Achashverosh was never spoken like that. So he had no idea. So he's not going to take this. So that according to the Medrash, what he first did is he sat with the Jewish sages, the Sanhedrin, who were always right near him. He called them over from Shtibel. They were in Shul the Shabbos morning. He calls them over and says, we got to talk. I want you to tell me, what should I do to my wife? Now, the Jews knew that they were in a bind. What are they going to say? If they're going to say kill her, then the next day he's going to wake up and he's going to say, you told me to kill her. How dare you? Now, if they say don't kill her, then he's going to say, you're embarrassing the throne. So they decide, you know what? They said this. Your honor, your majesty, the king. Ever since we've been exiled from our land, God has taken away so much of our wisdom. We don't feel that we are capable and wise enough to address such a major crime. We ask you to please let us step aside from this. Okay, say that. So now Achashverosh has to listen to his non-Jewish advisors. So he turns to them and says, Nu, ma lasot, what should we do? And that is when the character named Haman, whose other name was Memuchan, that's when he shows up and starts presenting his case. And boy, does he present the case. What does he say? Says, listen up, your honor, my majesty, the king. We are setting up, by the way, what he's about to say is the single most chauvinistic speech that's ever been given on the planet. It goes like this. I'm going to read it in English. Not only has Vashti caused a crime to the king, she has caused a travesty, a sin for all the ministers and all the nations of the lands. Because when people find out what this woman said to you, that you told her to come and she didn't come, all the wives of the ministers are going to say, we're going to do the same thing. We're also not going to listen to our husbands. And that's going to be a destruction of society. You know, ach and vei, when the women don't listen to their husbands. By the way, everything I'm saying is in jest. Just take it easy. But, you know, whatever. We're playing devil's advocate. We're giving Haman the platform. He says like this, if it's good in the eyes of the king, may a message go out, and it should be written in the laws, in the constitution, that Vashti did not come, and therefore the crown will go to another woman other than her. He doesn't say kill her, but pretty much that's what he says. And this message will be heard across the lands. And all the women will start respecting their husbands. How's that for a good chauvinistic speech? Let's kill the queen to make sure that no woman ever disrespects her husband again. And the king likes it. Good advice. Agadank. Genius. Whoever thought of such a thing? Unbelievable. So he sends a message to all the kings, to all the lands, in each language, because he had 127 lands, so that's many languages. And the law goes like this. The end of chapter 1 of the Megillah, with which we're going to stop now. Liot kol ish soreh bebeto. Every man will be the boss of the home, the ruler of the home. And the woman will talk whatever language he talks. He's in charge. Thus is his policy set. So, in case you think that we're chauvinists today, the Purim story reminds you what chauvinism really looks like.